People are saying that the Kyurem Fusion Raid Day is the worst event that has ever happened in Pokemon GO history. And while this seems dramatic, there are a ton of points and a ton of comments supporting this. So let's talk about it and see how this event could have been done better and just some thoughts from the community. It seems like it has been forever since we have had a successful raid day. This is not the first raid day in a while that has not gone perfectly. Let's not forget the Palkia Dialga Origin Form raid day that was a complete mess. And it's sad to see another raid day with so many complaints from the community, and honestly almost more than the Palkia Dialga, because at least the Palkia and Dialga raid days were actually messed up, and Niantic did officially say that. Now the Kyurem Fusion Raid Day event I don't think was actually messed up, I just think it was poorly executed and planned from a management standpoint. So looking online and also our Instagram posts, and thank you to everyone who commented on that, I was able to kind of gather the top complaints about this event. One of them was that there were too many Reshirams and Zekroms, and that this really didn't feel like a Kyurem Fusion Raid Day. Someone even online even said, how was your Reshiram Zekrom Raid Day? Because that's pretty much what it felt like. Some other comments were how hard it was to catch Kyurem, that the shiny odds were low, the weather was just bad for a lot of people, the servers ended up going down for part of the event at the beginning, there seemed to be possibly a rare XL candy ticket bug, and a lot of the Kyurems, Reshirams, and Zekroms didn't have their legacy moves. This is just the top complaints. There are definitely a lot more, so if you had any more complaints or experienced any other problems, definitely let us know in the comments. The first and the largest issue was the actual featured Pokemon for this raid day. Now it is called Kyurem Fusion Raid Day, so you're expecting that you're going to see the Kyurem Fusions out in raids during this event. And that is true, but we also saw Reshiram and Zekrom coinciding with the white or black Kyurem, whichever was in raid. So every 30 minutes, we had this rotation of which fusion was out alongside either Reshiram or Zekrom. Now going into this event, a lot of people already felt like this was going to be kind of a mess of an event, and it definitely ended up that way. When we played, there were more Reshirams and Zekroms than any of the Kyurem fusions. And this was the case for so many players. One of our Patreon members, Bad Soul, even shared their area where they play in San Antonio, Texas, and it was a lot of Reshiram and Zekroms rather than the Kyurem fusions. Now, I do understand why a decision was made to have Reshiram and Zekrom in the raids, but I feel like that percentage makeup made absolutely no sense. It would have been better to see 70–80% of the Kyurem fusions, 30 to 20% of the others, but it definitely seemed flip-flopped where I felt like I saw way more Reshirams, way more Zekroms than the Kyurem fusions at all. And a lot of people online either say just have it be Kyurem or make this a 2-day event, because 3 hours with 30-minute rotations really isn't enough. The time that we were going to see a Kyurem raid, we'd have to go all the way to the other side of the walkway, then maybe get there within 30 minutes. And then if we're there, it might not even be a Kyurem. So we'd have to walk all the way back to the other raids, and we might just end up wasting time. But at least if it was 2 separate days, maybe it would have been better. But having all of this in one day definitely seemed rushed, and it didn't really let people play the way they wanted to play. And not to mention, we have recently had Kyurem, Reshiram, and Zekroms in raids this season already, so I feel like even putting Reshiram and Zekrom in the mix for the raid day didn't make sense. If you weren't playing this month, I highly doubt that you're playing this raid day anyways, so most people who played this raid day probably already have Reshiram and Zekrom, because you don't really even need a good one. Yes, this is a good way to shiny hunt, especially with the 1 out of 10 shiny odds, and that's going to be the next point, is the shiny odds. But if you've played kind of the events recently, you don't really need the Reshiram Zekrom for the fusions. Just use your worst one and fuse it that way. More people really want to Kyurem, catching Kyurem for the candy, and getting that fusion to actually have a fusion to use. Now, another really big complaint that I have seen for this raid day, and for honestly a lot of other raid days, is the shiny odds. People are saying it doesn't really seem like 1 out of 10 shiny odds, and I have to say, I feel like I'm not seeing 1 out of 10 shiny odds either anymore, but this isn't the first time. I feel like it's been about a year since I've really been seeing the 1 out of 10 shiny odds, and the more raid days we have, the more raid days that I'm just convinced that that's not the shiny odds anymore. Now, the 1 out of 10 shiny odds is all kind of like crowdsourced. It's not even official. It's not really even in the data mines. So I just feel like over time, Niantic has just made a decision to make these shiny odds even harder. I don't even think 1 out of 20 for legendaries really makes sense anymore. Now, I know that there's RNG, but when you have so many people saying the same things, it does start making you question. I believe someone on our Instagram post said that they did like 60 raids and got 3 shinies, and like you definitely should be getting more than that. Because really the increased shiny odds is one of the biggest appeals of a raid day, because why not just go ahead and get your Kyurem, Reshiram, and Zekrom during the other events and then just get the energy for this? Like the real main reason to play this is that you can really get a really good 3-star shiny or even a shundo. It's what makes raid days so much fun. And just having so many raid days with either the shiny odds messed up or something like that just makes it less and less enjoyable to play. And I feel like we really saw that with the Palkia and Dialga, where the shiny odds were actually basically turned off, and it just like made the event not as fun. I still had a fun time going out, but it wasn't as fun as like when you're getting a bunch of shinies. Because also when you're getting a bunch of shinies, that means you're able to catch these faster. And this goes into my third point, that people were saying the catch rates were abysmal. They said so many fled from them. And I've seen a lot of comments online, a lot in our Patreon chat, that people had so many of these Kyurems flee from them. And no doubt Kyurem is a very difficult catch. A lot of people online and even some really notable trainers in the community are arguing that the catch rates should have been much easier. We should have seen a green circle for this. And I think we have definitely gotten used to Niantic boosting catch rates during big events, and we feel like this should be the case for a raid day, but Cream and I personally do not really agree with this. I'm going to kind of go over my explanation and logic for this. And before I go into our opinion about the catch rates, I do want to talk about this a little bit more, because I think one of the things about Kyurem that happens to a lot of people is that Kyurem is really, really tough to catch along with a lot of other dragon legendaries, because people just do not have that dragon platinum badge. That is one of the hardest to get. And whenever there are dragons during an event, we always tell people to catch as many as possible to get that platinum badge, because it makes it just that little bit easier to catch these dragon legendaries. And we did recently have Kyurem with an easy catch rate, which I do believe was kind of a glitch, a little bit maybe of like a marketing ploy when Kyurem was out last. And we did make a video kind of telling everyone about it, like go ahead and catch Kyurem now while it has an easy catch rate, because Kyurem is just notoriously difficult to catch. From my personal experience during the Go Tour last year, I felt like Kyurem was so difficult to catch, I sometimes just purposely didn't even catch it at all. It wasn't worth my time. We did not have an easy catch rate during the in-person event, but we did for the global event during that Go Tour. So I just ended up doing the raids, getting the fusion energy, and just not catching if it wasn't a hundo. And obviously if it's a shiny, you can catch it because it's an easy catch rate for the shinies. But if it wasn't a hundo, wasn't a shiny, I just fled from it because it wasn't worth my time. And this kind of goes into my logic and reasoning why I don't feel like Kyurem should have had an easy catch rate. It didn't for the Go Tour, so why should it during this raid day event? Most raid days, the catch rate isn't boosted or easy for us, so I'm not really sure why making Kyurem any easier than other raid days makes logical sense to me. Now, I do get it from a player's standpoint. Making it easier to catch means that you can do more and catch more, but again, this kind of keeps Kyurem a little bit more exclusive, which I do feel like is a lot of the reasons for the raid day just in general, is like the exclusivity of Kyurem and the Kyurem fusions. But other than just like why I agree with the players that it should be easy to catch because it would make it a lot more fun to play and do more raids, I still don't think it should have been that easy to catch because it just hasn't been historically, and it doesn't really make sense for a raid day. And for me, I just feel like making Kyurem difficult to catch really ties in line with its adventure effect, right? Both Black and White Kyurem's adventure effects make catching Pokemon easier. It does make it easier. So I feel like for Kyurem, it's very fitting that it's a difficult catch because it really makes you want to get that adventure effect and use it right away. And if you already had Kyurem, you could have been using Kyurem's adventure effect to make it easier to catch. Now, if this is your first time getting a Kyurem and not having that fusion, this is a really good reason for why you want it for these specific moments when it is really difficult to catch certain Pokemon. Like I feel like, Rayquaza is always kind of notoriously difficult to catch and things like that. So it makes a Pokemon like Kyurem even more exciting. That way you won't have these frustrations in the future. And I just think that having an easier catch rate for really big events like Go Fest, Go Tour, and Max Finale are really the only times that kind of make sense in my opinion. I don't think we should be having an easy catch rate for every single event because again, it just kind of makes the Pokemon a little less special. But I definitely think during big events like Go Fest, Go Tour, Max Finale, having that easy catch rate just makes the event even better. So why dilute those really big events and just make everything an easy catch rate? I just feel like it doesn't make sense to me. And just having those big events have those like reasons why it's easier to catch just makes it that much more special versus if it's always easy to catch, like kind of what's the point then? But despite my personal opinion, I am still sharing, though, the general consensus of the community that people thought it should have been easier to catch because it was very difficult to catch. And I think if that's what people want, then at the end of the day, maybe let's just make it a little bit easier to catch. Maybe instead of a red circle, when you use a golden raspberry, at least make it orange. Maybe not green, but orange would at least be a little bit better. So these three main reasons are a lot of the complaints that I was seeing online. And there are a couple other things that happened during the event. One of them is that the servers actually went down when Japan went online. We even saw that here. We were trying to play a little bit and like the app just wasn't working. It hadn't been our raid day yet, but because Japan came on, it just kind of messed up the entire game for everyone. And even during our raid day, we couldn't send remote raid invites because our friends list wasn't loading. So there just kept being more and more issues during the raid day. And this is a common thing that happens. And this is not the first raid day ever that Niantic has had to host. So at this point, these glitches should be fixed. Servers should not go down. I should easily be able to send remote raid invites and not have these problems going on. Because again, this is not the first or second raid day. We have had a lot of raid days in the past that these problems should not exist. Oh, and then when you did end up catching Kyurem, Reshiram, or Zekrom, they may or may not have had their legacy moves. Now, it was known in the post that the Kyurem may have Glaciate, so that was always going to be an option, but for a lot of people, it felt like a lot of the Kyurems did not have Glaciate at all. Now, it is TMable, so there is that, but still, it would have been nice, especially for a raid day, to have the guaranteed legacy moves. But Reshiram and Zekrom were supposed to have guaranteed legacy moves, and a lot of people are reporting that they did not end up getting those. So if you were kind of in that camp, let me know in the comments, because the more support we have, the better it is, because I hope Niantic does end up watching these videos and can kind of see complaints, because I think there are things that they can do to improve that, and like if it is promised to have legacy moves and that's not there, then that should be compensated. But also during this event, the weather was extremes on both ends of the world. Australia, it was extremely hot and players were reporting how hot it was, and having such a good raid day like this in extreme heat is really difficult physically. And on the other side of the world, in the US and Europe and the cold part of the world, it is extremely cold. People were reporting snow and ice. And when you have raids where you're trying to get Kyurem and you're either driving or walking and there could be ice, that is a very dangerous situation. And Pokemon Go players do put themselves in a little bit more harm than you want to admit, whether it's extreme heat, extreme cold, walking on ice. There's just a lot of reasons that people could get hurt. So why make this event any more difficult than it has to be, especially when you have these extremes of hot and cold that players are having to play in? And I feel like when you look at every single thing here, it really puts a sour note on this event, right? The Kyurem Fusions are extremely sought after Pokemon. If you miss when they were debuted, this is your first time to get them, and it is such an exciting moment, right? You have this huge excitement. Players who are ready to play commit 3 hours or more to add like remote raids on top of it. They've prepared for this. And then to put an event like this on, I feel it just makes people just so unexcited to play the game, and it just makes it feel like no event will ever go right. So when you have just all of these issues just compounding one after the other, and an exciting event that should have been fun, similar to Palkia and Dialga, you just put a damper on the community, and it just seems like no one at the company is listening to how players really want to play an event, or just getting any feedback and feeling like our feedback is being heard by the company. But on a positive note, I do always like being positive about this game because this game brings so much enjoyment and happiness to my life, Cream's life, to a lot of people's lives, that there are some people who had some really good luck. One person on Instagram told us that they got a shundo and then right after got a hundo. So that is like incredible. And a lot of people are just happy to get the fusion. Again, right? We don't all have to chase hundos or shundos. We're just happy to get the fusion. So some people were just really excited to just finally get that chance. And Cream and I, we just had fun, right? It was our wedding anniversary. We went out, got lunch, and afterwards it just was like, oh, it's raid day, so let's go play. We did our free raid passes, and we saw that there were like no Kyurems. We're like, okay. And usually in the past, it would probably be a very stressful moment, especially if we're streaming, trying to create a video. It's like, oh my gosh, there's no Kyurem fusions. But yesterday we were just like, we're just gonna have fun and we're just going to sit and drink some like watermelon juice or pineapple juice and do these Reshiram or Zekrom raids, and it was kind of fun that way. There did end up being 2 Kyurem fusions towards the end and my phone was at 1% and I was like, oh my gosh, can I get this? It better be shiny. And it was shiny the first time. The second one was also shiny, so I was able to do 2 raids on 1% battery, get shinies back to back so that way I could catch them really fast. So at the end of the day, we still had fun. We didn't really grind too hard because, again, we did go to LA for this event. We played the global when they were debuted, so we have our fusions. We don't really use the Kyurem Adventure Effects too much. Kyurem just personally isn't my favorite Pokemon in the world, but you still want a good one because it is a very good Pokemon. It's extremely meta relevant, but we've played this event kind of already, so for us, it was just a chill day. It just is sad to see so many people who don't have the fusion who had a negative experience, though. In the future, what I would really love to see, especially for a fusion type Pokemon, is having 2 raid days, especially if this is kind of a trend where we're gonna have like the fusion and the Pokemon that it's fused with, is having 2 days of an event. That way people can take the full 3 hours advantage of one fusion and the other, or just don't even include the Pokemon that it's fused with. Like I think for Necrozma, Solgaleo and Lunala were definitely not in raids, but I think that would have been a really big pro, honestly, for the community, but they weren't in raids, so you could just focus on Necrozma. So I either feel like for Kyurem, it just should have been Kyurem, or the rotation should have been better and a 2-day event with including Reshiram and Zekrom as well. Because Reshiram and Zekrom aren't bad Pokemon either. Like you do want those, you want the shinies, you want a good one. So it is nice having them in, but I feel like it should have just been Kyurem, and we still could have had a Reshiram Zekrom raid day, or because they were just in raids, people have those already. And I do think with the catch rate, making it slightly easier would be better, but that does again make the appeal for Kyurem's Adventure Effect just kind of there. So for me, it makes sense, but if we did make it just slightly easier, that way people didn't have as many flee, that would be good. And then the same with the shiny odds, either bring back the 1 out of 10 or just be more transparent about what is the actual shiny odds, because I do feel like it's changed. So we just need a little bit more transparency in that, and just really more transparency in the game, and like, hey, it's gonna be Kyurem Fusion Raid Day, but you're gonna see 70% Reshiram Zekrom and the rest are gonna be Kyurems. They're gonna be hard to get because again, it is a really sought after legendary. It keeps it more exclusive, but at least tell people so that way they know that going into an event. But I would love to hear from everyone in the comments. How was your raid day? Pros, cons, did you get shinies? Did you get hundos, nundos? Well, wait, you can't get a nundo, but what if you got a nundo in the wild? Doesn't matter. Whatever your experience was, please let us know in the comments. I'd love to continue this conversation. I'd love to gather more evidence of the pros and the cons, so that way hopefully someone somewhere up in the higher ups can see this and see the comments that we're actually leaving. Again, positive criticism, constructive criticism is always well appreciated. So let me know in the comments what you guys thought about the raid day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
We want to give a huge thank you to our incredible Patreon supporters. Your support means everything to us and helps make content like this possible.
You're helping us take things to the next level. We couldn't do this without you.